Erica with Launching Legacies. Welcome to our daily devotional. This week we are dedicating this series of devotions to looking at the true character of God, recognizing God for his love and his faithfulness. Remember yesterday I talked about how often people think of God as an oppressor, as a bully. I've heard people say all kinds of things about God and the nature of him as someone who basically wants to run things, or a deity that wants to run things and is not gracious or loving. And so the scripture couldn't point to a more different God than that. And so I'm going to the Old Testament again. And the reason why I'm going to the Old Testament is because there's a lot of even evangelical Christians that say, well, the God of the Old Testament was really unkind and he was brutal and he wasn't kind and loving. And that's not true. And we can see that by looking at some of the works of the Old Testament that demonstrate the love of God toward man. And so today we're going to look at Psalm 136. So I got to tell you my personal history with this psalm. So I was raised in the church I was raised in. They read Psalm 136 every morning. Okay. Very almost ritualistically, they read it every morning. And I didn't really know why they would read that particular psalm every morning until I researched the psalm and found out that we don't know who the author of this psalm is, but we do know that the psalm was read in Solomon's temple. And it was likely read on a continual basis. And when I read the psalm to you, it will make sense as to why the children of Israel would have listened to this psalm on a regular basis in Solomon's temple. It reminded them of God's faithful love. And that's an important thing to recognize, is that God was faithful to them and they knew it. And they weren't confused about whether or not God loved them or was a faithful God to them, even though they lived in the time of the Old Testament, right? Even though they lived in the time in which people are like, oh no, God was just kind of like a bully at that time, and he wasn't there. Jesus wasn't here yet, so he wasn't gracious, and that's not necessarily true. I mean, it's not true. So let's just read what this psalm says. So I'll give you a little side note too before I do that. Every line is followed by the line, his faithful love endures forever, and depends on what translation you read. His love endures forever, his faithful love endures forever. It just depends on what translation. I'm reading from the New Living Translation, and it says, give thanks to God, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, his faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords, his faithful love endures forever. Okay, so then we're going to pause for a little bit, okay? So this part is talking about the sovereignty of God. So the first three verses is talking about give thanks to God because he is good, he's sovereign, he's holy, his faithful love endures forever. That's what that first three verses are about, his sovereignty. And so then the next verse 4 says, give thanks to him who alone does mighty miracles. Now we're going to talk about the things that he performs, okay? And then his faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to him who made the heavens so skillfully. And again, his faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to him who placed the earth among the waters. Give thanks to him who made the heavenly lights, the sun to rule by day and the moon and stars to rule at night. Okay, so then this stanza 4 through 9 are giving thanks to him for creation. So we started with sovereignty, right? 1 through 3 was sovereignty, and 4 through 9 are creation. And so then we move on to verse 10, and it's remember, it always says his faithful love endures forever. I'm just not going to always read it. So give thanks to him who killed the firstborn of Egypt. His faithful love endures forever. He brought Israel out of Egypt. He acted with a strong hand and powerful arm. He give thanks to him who parted the Red Sea. He led Israel safely through, but he hurled Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea. Give thanks to him who led his people through the wilderness. His faithful love endures forever. Okay, so then what is this talking about? The Exodus. So we went from the sovereignty of God to God's work in creation to the Exodus, right? And so this psalm is giving a history of the children of Israel, and that's why it was read in the temple. It was reminding the children of Israel, look, this is the God that is sovereign, the God most high. This is Yahweh. This is our God. And then look, he created the earth. He shaped and formed the earth, and then he brought us out of Egypt. He brought us out of hundreds of years of slavery into the wilderness, and he rescued us even from the wilderness. And so that's where we are. When we get to verse 17, he says, give thanks to him who struck down mighty kings. Okay. His faithful love endures forever. He killed powerful kings. His faithful love endures forever. Sihon, the king of Amorites, Og, the king of Bashan. God gave the land of these kings as an inheritance, a special possession to his servants Israel. Okay, and so what is that part going? It says, look, this is the work that he did in the land of Canaan. So once the children of Israel left Egypt, they wandered in the wilderness. We've already talked about that in the last few set of verses. And now in this set of verses, he's saying, look, he killed the kings that were against us when we were going through the land of Canaan and gave their land to us as an inheritance. So this is the God that rescued us through the land of Canaan. He was our God at that time. And then the last set of verses starts with verse 23, and it says, he remembered us in our weakness. His faithful love endures forever. He saved us from our enemies. He gives food to every living thing. Give thanks to God of heaven. His faithful love endures forever. So what is it? It ends with a summary of, listen, this is the God that knows who we are. He cares for us and he's near unto us. And the last one says, give thanks to the God of heaven. This is the God of heaven. This is not a made up God. This is not a idol or something that we have created or something we've imagined. This is the God of all creation. And so it ends by giving thanks to him there. And so this call and response psalm of Psalm 136 is quite beautiful. And I understand more why it was read in the at my church every morning when we were coming from Sunday school, but also now understanding why it was read in the temple. He's saying, listen, these were not good things. We're talking about war, but God was good to us. We're talking about slavery, but God was good to us. We're talking about creation. Yeah, but we all know that creation had the dark side of sin entering in, but God was good to us. We walked from one place to the other for 40 years, but God was good to us. And so it's not saying that, everything is always rosy and everything is always wonderful. That's not what's happening here. But this is a story of God's goodness, despite the difficulties that were happening throughout the timeline of what this psalm is talking about. There would have been millions of Israelites that would have died. 100% sure, from all the war and the droughts and the difficulties and the hard times and the slavery. There were many people who died and many difficult things that happened. And so they're not saying, oh, give thanks to him because only good things happen because of him. No, but they're saying, look at his love. His faithful love endures forever. At the end of the journey, I don't know what the journey is going to entail. It might have some difficulties. You may feel alone. You may feel like you're isolated. You may feel like you've been abandoned, but his faithful love truly endures forever. And that's why they read this in Solomon's temple on a regular basis. That's why it was a call and response, because they're like, look no, this is what he did. And then all you could say is, well, yeah, his faithful love does endure forever. We were a small nation that came out of slavery, and all of a sudden we're fighting some of the most mighty nations in the world at that time. His faithful love has to endure forever, right? We're still alive, right? We are still a remnant preserved. His faithful love definitely endures forever. It's a point in which you're like, look, these are the things that happen. If he wasn't faithful, then these things would have never happened. We would have never made it through these miraculous times, these wondrous times. Creation wouldn't be still existing. I mean, we're talking about a God who spoke and the world was shaped and formed. His faithful love truly endures forever. So if you're getting discouraged, or if you know someone who gets discouraged, one place that you can go to find encouragement of recognizing the faithful love of God is to these scriptures. Psalm 136 is a beautiful passage. And what he's saying is things will happen. Difficult times will come upon you. They may come upon your people, like the people of Israel. But his faithful love endures forever. From the Old Testament to the New Testament, from Genesis to Revelation, from the Alpha to the Omega, his faithful love truly does endure forever. I hope that you're encouraged with this devotional. Keep praying for us. We're praying for you, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Have a blessed day.